We are on live. We have around 549 participants. Hopefully it will increase soon. So we'll start. No? So very good morning to one and all. It's our great pleasure to welcome you all for this Knowledge 4.0 webinar series. It is one of the unique initiative of our chairman, Mr. P. Sriram, chairman, Chennai Institute of Technology, who is the first generation successful entrepreneur, well-known educationalist and industrialist, managing director of MK Group of Companies. So under Knowledge 4.0, we have been conducting a continuous series of webinars in technical webinar series, research webinar series, career guidance webinar series, and innovation webinar series. Today we have a technical webinar series named as Communication Skills for Corporate Success. And we have Mr. Raghuram Ramamurthy, founder and CEO of Rapid Acceleration Partners. We welcome you, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you.
To say about CIT, Chennai Institute of Technology was established in 2010. Our honorable chairman, Mr. P. Sriram. Now our institute is being within top 10 institutes among private engineering colleges in Tamil Nadu. To introduce about our guest, Mr. Raghuraman, he completed his engineering in electronics and communication department from the University of Madras, and he holds an MBA in finance and marketing in the University of Madras. And previous to RAP, he has been associated with Kevin Kerr, ICICI Bank, Barry Rambler, Satyam Computer Services, and he has been the director and co-founder of many organizations like Smart Audit Services, Vajro Inc., and Smart Financial Services, Scala Marketing. Now he is the founder and director of Rapid Acceleration Partners. Thanks for being here, sir. We welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, you can start with.
Sure. So without much ado, let me start off with slides. So I'm conducting this today's session is conducted on behalf of EmergWay Academy, right? So just want to kind of give a high-level overview of EmergWay Academy. Right? EmergWay Academy is a company founded by a group of experienced professionals in the industry, right? People with 20, 30 years of experience. And EmergWay's core thought is to run some flagship programs, industry bridge programs aimed at grooming engineering and management graduates to be future leaders when they enter organizations. So the EmergWay also work with a lot of corporates on the competency building side. In addition, they work extensively with engineering colleges, providing them with both application-based training as well as more flagship long-term trainings to groom engineers before they come out of college. So a lot of what we are going to cover today is drawn from what we cover in some of those sessions. So today's topic is communication for corporate success, right? I have a lot of slides, but I'm not going to cover all of the slides today. I'll probably spend till about 10-50 or so on the slides, kind of quickly give a glimpse to the various facets of communication that we want to cover today, right? And then once we are done, then maybe we'll have about 10 minutes of questioning in case you have any questions there. Okay. So why are we even talking about communication, right? Meaning all of us are talking about communication everywhere, right? Meaning why is it even required at all, right? Communication is obviously, as you all know, communication is a vital part of everything we do. Like communication is not just about sharing thoughts or ideas, which everyone understands that's how we talk, but it's also our ability to be able to organize complex processes, right? Is our ability to relate to each other, right? Our ability to celebrate something, right? And also our ability to share aspects of our personal professional lives, right? So communication is literally beyond just sharing knowledge or ideas or information, right? Communication is the key to a lot of binding factors that happen within one another, right? Meaning in the area of COVID today we all talk about remote working and all of this webinar stuff and all that, right? but we also know that there is some part of communication that is longing. Right? There is some part of communication that we all want to get out of this lockdown and meet with each other. And that is all stemming from the fact that communication is also a very, very vital human need. Right? So on the corporate side, what is that we are talking about, right? Meaning in a recent survey, I think the survey is about 2 years old, right? And in a survey of about recruiters from companies with more than 50,000 employees, right? They said the communication was cited as the single most important and decisive factor in choosing managers, promotion of managers, right? And then University of Pittsburgh created a big research paper based on this survey, right? And they point out that communication skill includes written, oral communication, as well as ability to work with others, right? Meaning the idea of working with others is how well are you able to clearly communicate, relate to them, empathy, how do you work in a team? So a lot of other facets of communication. So today, what we are going to do is, I know most of you would have been easily gone through multiple presentations or trainings on written and oral communication. Today, we are going to focus on a different form of communication, which impacts our ability to work with others, right? And that's the third facet of communication that we are going to cover today. Right? So let's kind of quickly break down the communication cycle, right? So the first step is we have ideas, right? Information, experiences, something that we want to be able to share, right? Then we form or build a message, right? Then we send a message. The other person, receiver, receives a message, right? It's almost like, so when you form or build a message, you kind of coded it in a certain form, which is your language, whatever, right? And then the other person decodes that message. Then they build a response again, which is again a coded response. And then you respond back to the person who gave you the message, right? So if you, meaning most of us are engineers here, so we kind of like to break this all down into analytical steps, right? So that's kind of what we have attempted to do here, right? And all of this, if you want to make the relationship much more smoother and you want to communicate something in a form that is well received, all of this will need to be wrapped up in a warm and inviting personal demeanor, right? Now, um, so let me just back up one minute. So ideas and info, we don't need to dwell much about it, right? There's one point that I want to talk about in forming or building a message, right? When you build a message, it is a bunch of tools that you're being taught, right? Your language, your grammar skills, your written communication, your oral communication, your voice, your tone, right? A lot of those components go into building that message, right? And when you have language, grammar, and those kinds of skills, it's also very critical to determine whether the receiver also has the same tools, right? So if they don't have the same tools, it's almost like saying, okay, um, you have coded the message in a certain way, and then you have a decoder that you have a barcode scanner of sorts that you have here, a decoder. So if you have not coded in a way that the receiver cannot decode it, right, then it's a fundamental issue, right? So we always think of language being the only way that we code a message, but there is a lot more things that go in when you essentially code a message, right? So what we code out is, other than language, we code it out with verbal, right? That is how we communicate. The tone, right? The tonal clarity with which we communicate, whether we say something at a much sharper tone, a much lighter tone, a more polite tone, a more very angry tone, and things like that, and non-verbal communication, right? So what happens is, it's also that non-verbal is such a critical component of how you send the message, that it is more accurate than the verbal message itself, the words that you put together itself, right? Uh, so this is again part of research that neuro-linguistic practitioners use, right? What they say is the words or languages, the word choices make only about 7% of how the other person communicates. Meaning that doesn't mean that words are not important. Words are absolutely important because they form the crux of the message, right? In terms of what you're trying to say, but in terms of how the other person understands your communication, words merely form only 7% of the choice, right? 38% of the core understanding is contributed by the tone, right? Your emotions, your attitude, how you communicate it. Are you polite? Are you angry? What do you want to communicate, right? And then 55% of the communication is contributed by facial expressions, postures, gestures, and your body message, right? Body language. So essentially, non-verbals actually contributes to more than 50% of the communication component itself, right? Which is also easily shown by the fact that you actually are able to understand most of the things in context. You could watch movies that are not in your language and still be able to understand broadly what is happening, right? Understand the context of what is happening, even if you're not able to exactly understand the word choices and things like that. So even if you watched a movie that is not in your language, you'll still be able to understand the storyline by just looking at the movie, even if you don't have subtitles or understand the language, because words only form a small part of what the communication is. So the other part of communication that we look at is you listen to the message, right? So when we have talked about the communication part where you send a message, but let's come to the key facet of communication that we are going to cover today, a couple of pieces. That is, how do you listen to a message, right? Most times, like I said, there is a net that we carry, right? And how well we are able to catch what the other person is saying is very, very dependent on how tight our net is, right? So, for example, it's like catching fish. If your net is big, then you can only catch big fish, right? If you're netted very closely, then you can catch a lot more fish, including the smaller ones, right? So, essentially, how does your net look like? That you are able to actually listen to everything that the other person is trying to tell you. Right? Again, the net is a very symbolic representation of how well you can hone your communication cycle. Right? If your listening skills are much stronger, then think of it as having a net with very, very small holes that you will not let anything else escape your attention when the other person is communicating. Once you've listened to the message, you also decode the message, right? Again, decoding means it's not just looking at the words, but also about the emotion, their situation, empathizing with the user, right? Looking at symbols, experiences. So when somebody is angry, for example, right, we know that the other person is angry. So very often we tend to attach a lot of importance to the emotion that the other person is communicating, whereas it is very critical to also attach a lot of meaning to the words or what is it that the person is saying, right? And kind of maybe discard or ignore, try to ignore how it is being said, because the moment you say this is how something is being communicated, right, you tend to lose the core meaning of what is being communicated, and we tend to attach a lot of importance to the emotion of how it is being communicated, right? So that's a very critical component of what the decoding the message is, our ability to be able to understand the emotion, understand what is being said, understand how it is being said, use empathy to determine how to kind of suppress the importance of how it is being said, and based on that, try to attach a lot more importance to what is being said itself, right? So, for example, in today's situation, let's say you are in the airline industry, right, and you're someone in the customer service team of an airline industry. You're going to be bombarded with messages and calls and stuff that people are going to throw at you to ask for what is going to change, right? Like, meaning, how do I reschedule my flights? How do I do stuff? So, and people are going to be irate, people are going to be angry, people are going to be frustrated when they call out. But as a customer service professional, it becomes extremely critical that they empathize with the situation, they empathize with why people are behaving that way, and patiently try to focus on just what is being said and try to answer that question, right? And that is not true only with, so most times we think patience as a virtue for listening is a very critical component of only customer service professionals, but that's not true at all, right? I mean, as you grow as managers, as you grow as leaders within organizations, right? As you go into a company, you talk to a customer, right? So it is a key component of listening is a key component of every single communication piece that you have to do, irrespective of the role that you have to play. Okay. And then once you've decoded that message, then you start building out the response, right? Again, the response is you choose the right words, the codes, gestures, right? Because we are listening, we know we have empathized, we know what is being said, right? And we've learned the ability to suppress how it is being said, right? Building a response will also become a lot more intelligent and lot more meaningful, because the response does not include just a counter emotion, but the response actually includes a meaningful message and a response, right? And the other thing that we all also have to understand is between what is being communicated and between what we listen, right? There are usually these filters, environmental filters that come in, right? Essentially, what we mean by filters are filters that block the communication between what is being sent and what is being received, right? So one such filter is inability to be able to communicate in person, right? One such filter is inability to be able to look at each other, make eye contact when you're talking over the phone or whatever, right? So these are ones that tend to cause a lot more degradation of the message when it is sent from one place to the other, right? And most of your engineers, you all study about communication, how you kind of do lossless communication and so on, right? And this kind of communication is no different, right? Because as a listener, it is key for us to understand how do I make my antenna so sharp that I can make the communication more lossless, even understanding that there will be a lot of environmental filters that are there. So with that, we'll zoom in and focus a little bit on listening very specifically, right? We're going to focus on two specific skills today on the part of communication, right? Essentially, the part of communication that helps you work with each other, right? And one of the first facets that we're going to cover today is why listen, right? So listening is a basic business skill, right? I mean, almost all of your schooling and the time that you spent in colleges and all that, a big portion of what you've been taught is, hey, how do I improve my communication, written communication, oral communication, right? How do I improve public speaking, presentation skills, and so on, which is we are formative pieces of how do you communicate an idea that you have in the best possible way that it reaches the other person, right? Now it's time for you to start focusing on what is a very famous, very basic business skill, which is listening. Listening is a key component of relationships, right? And if you are a leader, take it from me, listening is the most helpful thing a leader can ever do, right? Listening is a very key component of emotional intelligence, right? So today, all of us talk about IQ, right? A big portion of IQ is built during your formative educational years, right? But today there is also a big focus on how do you build EQ. Only IQ is not enough to cut it out in the big world. You also have to build out your EQ. Listening is a very key component of any form of negotiation, sales, conflict resolution, because unless you understand where the other person is coming from, unless you understand that message that the other person is trying to tell you without any loss or misunderstanding, you will not be able to respond in the right way to ensure that you are able to communicate it. You are able to communicate your ideas through properly, respond to those statements, and thereby make a successful negotiation or successful sale, or even resolve a conflict amicably. What does listening really help you do, right? Just the fact that you are able to listen to the others, right, makes you build rapport with that person, right? So imagine a relationship between two friends where both of them constantly keep talking, right? So if you had a friend that he would just keep talking and you just have to listen all the time, right? And he does not lend you a listening ear at any point in time. Think of all your relationships. If your friend wouldn't listen to you, then you wouldn't have a very close friendship with that person at all anymore, right? And the other way is also true. When your friend or someone has any issues, has any challenges, and or anything that they want to share, if you didn't listen, then that relationship wouldn't continue at all. What listening also helps build is loyal followers. It helps you build trust with others, right? Which is a very, very key component of any relationship, more so at the workplace, right? If there is no trust between one another, essentially what happens is there is no way that you're going to be able to make any meaning out of that relationship and build it further from there, right? And um, take it from me, right? The best salespeople are people that listen. The best negotiators are people that listen, that understand what you want, right? And then offer you the right solutions, right? And if you're a salesperson, for example, unless you understood exactly what the customer wants and listen, there is no way that you're going to make a sale happen, right? Or if you're an engineer that needs to build a good product, unless you listen to what the market wants or your customer wants, you will never be able to build a product that what the customer needs, right? So that way, it's a very critical component of um, any building any relationship. Okay. So just this is the communication cycle that we looked at, right? So we are looking at the part of the communication cycle which is essentially the listening components, right? So there are core listening skills, right? And if you notice that we've changed the name to reflective listening at this point in time, right? The reason that we say reflective listening is, so listening is not just hearing, right? Listening is also being able to reflect on what is being said, internalize that um, information that is being communicated to you, right? And then based on that, construct your response, right? And there are 5 key listening skills that we're going to quickly cover today, right? The first is attending behavior, acknowledgements, door openers, silence, and then a key component of listening that we will introduce today called active listening. And all of that at any point in time enveloped in empathy, right? Being able to understand the other person's situation and empathize with that. Okay. Attending behavior is nothing but it's something that we've all been taught, right? Make eye contact, have an open body posture that makes you inviting to listen to that person, right? Lean forward, nod, give that person full attention, and show that you are present within to that other person, right? Because just imagine a situation, you all went out in the workplace and you walked into an office and you were talking to your manager, and that manager was constantly looking at his laptop and not looking at you. Would you even feel like you want to communicate any further? You will get interrupted with that, right? So that is essentially what we call as attending behaviors, showing to that other person that you are fully present with them, and the fact make it inviting for the other person to share information freely. The second skill is acknowledgements, right? Essentially telling the other person that we are tuned in, right? Okay, just saying okay, nodding, okay, expressing with your eyes that you've listened to that, right? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, go ahead, right? Things like that that you keep acknowledging to ensure that the other person continues to share what they want to share. Door openers, again, this is a continuation of the, the previous section, which is encouraging the other person to talk more, right? Hey, tell me more. Okay, are you done? Is there anything else that you want to share, right? Or sounds like you have something to share, right? Or do you have anything more to add to this, right? Those are things that are door openers. Essentially, again, inviting and making that person share more, and making it less inhibiting for the other person to share information. Again, door openers, do not mistake door openers with mining kind of questions, right? You want to be able to allow the person to share information freely in a form that they want to be able to share, rather than you enforcing a thing, right? If you ask questions that are very pointed, right, then it essentially breaks the free line conversation that the other person wanted to share. Usually, the best practice is to allow the person to share completely what they want to share, and then if you have questions, kind of rephrase and build on that, rather than doing mining on that. Okay. Silence again. It's a given that all of us will be silent when we are listening, right? Why do I even have a slide on that here, right? Because silence is not just external, right? It is also an internal component, right? If you all reflect back at how what you've done in the past in previous cases that you had to listen to things and so on, right? What happens is we are usually quiet, but we could be thinking of something else. We are already thinking of an answer to give, even when the person started asking a question or started talking about something, right? Even before the person is finished, we have already started building a response. So, a key component of listening is also being able to quiet your mind, not just your voice, right? And not think of anything else or not necessarily build a response, but essentially give all your thought and attention to receive that message in the fullest form, understand what the person is saying, and then start building your response, right? Essentially, your mind is much faster than the fastest of supercomputers that you can ever have, right? So even if you gave your mind just a couple of seconds after the complete response is done, your mind will quickly construct a response. So you don't have to worry about whether or not you will have the time to construct a response. Wait for the other person to finish. Then you can always take that 1-2 second pause. Nothing will kill it. Then construct a response and then communicate it back. So during all this, one of the key things that also inhibits good listening is um, disagreement, right? While the other person starts to say something, let us say we disagree with that, right? The moment you disagree with what the other person is saying, it will start showing up in your body language. It will start showing up. You're already constructing an argument in your mind. So you've broken that silence, right? You've stopped acknowledging or inviting the other person to go on and share their complete thoughts, right? And at that point, what happens is you're no longer um, allowing the other person to share all the thoughts that they wanted to share, right? And you may have caught only a part of the information, or you have not caught all of the information, but you disagreed right in the beginning. So you did not let the other person complete the message, because of which your response will also be very weak. So one thing that I'd like to put in here is acceptance is not equal to agreement, right? Acceptance is being able to see and be okay with where the other person is, whatever they are saying. So if I say okay to something, that does not mean that I agree with you, right? If I said okay while you're talking, that only means that I am willing to listen to what you said and I'm acknowledging the fact that I've listened to you, right? But at that point, you don't have to necessarily jump in and respond. Allow the person to complete their response, complete their statement. After that, you can always say, hey, I kind of don't agree with what you say, or I disagree with what you say, right? And then put out all your points. Because the moment you start disagreeing right up front, then you don't catch the full message. Your response may be inadequate, your argument may be inadequate, and your what you also end up doing is there may be something in what the other person is saying sense. Because of that, what could happen is that you miss that because you did not allow the other person to say it fully or express it completely. You deny the other person an opportunity to communicate, whereby you also deny yourself an opportunity to understand what that person is saying. So those are the 4 skills that we talked about. We'll jump on to active listening, right? Active listening is nothing but proving to the talker that you understand, right? So essentially, a message has 2 components to that. There is the facts and the feelings of what the person is trying to communicate. Essentially, the words and the emotions, right? Again, the emotions could be communicated through tone, demeanor. It could be communicated through non-verbals, everything. But essentially, in active listening, it is sounds to me like you are frustrated that something like this is happening, right? So essentially, what you do is you construct a message back to the listener, which is kind of paraphrasing what they said, but also adding the feeling component to that and said, I can understand that you're frustrated because of this, right? Or something like that. So to ensure that you communicate to them that you've listened, you have understood what they're saying, and then now you're going to try and construct a response based on that, right? This is a key component that we all of us tend to miss out on, right? While intuitively we may be doing the first four skills, active listening is a skill that most of us do not do that, right? And the most successful people are ones uh, that kind of practice active listening, because that way you have communicated to the person that communicated the message, that you've listened to what they said, you've also understood their feelings, and the fact that you said that, but you don't necessarily have to agree to that, you accept that. So that kind of brings us to the end of listening as a skill, right? We are about 15 minutes away from being, closing this to get to question answer. So I will jump on to the next topic, which is effective confrontation, right? Again, we talked about listening, right? We talked about being able to send a message, right? What are situations that you will have, that you tend to face in a typical work environment, that you will be able to overcome with, right? So one question that I'd like all of you to think about before we jump into this full on is, why do people avoid conflict or confronting others? Right? The moment I said confrontation, all of us said, okay, hey, here is a confrontation, right? Today we are all talking about a confrontation between India and China there at the borders, right? A confrontation between two parties, two political parties, right? So there is always a negative connotation that we all attach to confrontation, right? So just think of these 2 points, reflect on these, right? Why do people avoid conflict or confronting with others? And why do you as an individual avoid conflict or confronting with others? Right? If you even thought about a response, right, it would be one of these, yeah, right? Why people avoid conflict? The last time I had conflict with someone, it ended up badly, right? The last time someone cut me on the road, right, and I stopped to confront that person and hit me very badly, right? So that's very unpleasant experience that I don't want to repeat again, right? I'll come back to the second point again. We'll jump on to the third one, right? Unpredictable outcome. You don't know what will happen if I confront and get into that situation. There's a fear of getting hurt or hurting the others with what we say, words that we use. Anticipation of reprisal. Again, okay, if I confront or conflict with a friend, they will stop talking to me, they will stop asking me anything, or they may take it to the wrong sense. Fear that conflict will lead to even more conflict, right? I go and raise something, that person will raise something on at me, and then it becomes a much more nastier conflict. So I might just let this go, right? There is a lack of trust that the other person will take it in the right spirit, right? So you don't know how that other person will take it. So essentially, we don't even get into a conflict, right? And wrestling with the need to be needed is kind of connected with these points here, right? That is, okay, I want to be feel needed, right? So I want people come to me and ask me questions, ask me doubts, right? They create a dependency on me. If I go and confront, they will stop coming to me and talking to me and ask me questions, right? So that's a very wrong notion that we all have, that because all of us have this need to be needed, we believe that if we go and confront or there is a conflict, that will not meet our needs of being needed to be needed, right? And then the last is a false belief that it will go away, right? If we don't confront, why unnecessarily raise questions and do all this? It will, time will kind of take away. So essentially, because we don't want to go into conflict, we don't want to raise a conflict, we also essentially only show three specific coping responses if we get into a conflict, right? One is we tend to fight, retaliate against the power, right? Most times, if we believe that the opposite power is either equal to or lesser than us, that's when we tend to fight or retaliate against that power, right? We show a flight response, which is run away from the power, right? Again, if we have a feeling that the power is that we are fighting against is more powerful than us, we tend to just flight from that power, right? So think of it as fighting is at school. If there was a friend that you wanted to fight against or somebody in your classmate, then most times we would have shown a fight response for conflict, right? If it were in our childhoods, if it were our parents that were trying to confront us, or there was a senior that was trying to confront us, right? Then we know that we don't want to increase, meaning make that situation bad. Then we would have shown a flight response from there, run away from that situation, or we would have shown a hold response, which is again resigned to that power and just do what that power is saying. So if we are in the situation of receiving the confrontation, right, then we would have a fight, flight, or hold response. Let's say we are the one that is starting the confrontation, right? Or we are the one that is bugged and want to be able to start that confrontation, right? Then we have three choices there, right? One is accept that situation, right? Let's say there is someone at work that is constantly coming late to work every day, right? So you could, I am bugged by that behavior, the fact that that person constantly comes late to work every day. So I can either do an accept response, which is see that, okay, there's a disappointing behavior, but I know I'm not going to question because unnecessarily, if I question, that person will leave the organization, right? So then I just kind of keep quiet about it. So that is a false acceptance because it will never lead to solving the problem. It could also lead to others looking at the fact that that is not being questioned and essentially go back and the others also start showing that kind of a behavior. Okay, so that is acceptance. The other is you change the environment, right? So you say you look at a way for to change that environment, right, and then remove the disappointing behavior. How you do that is you put in a HR policy or you create a system and say, hey, this person is coming late. From now on, if you don't put in your fingerprint on time, then your salary will be deducted, right? You try to create an environment change, right? While an environment change will be helpful in certain situations, an environment change is not the least desirable method of trying to make changes from a confrontation standpoint, because the person would not have seen a reason to change, and it is just a cover for us to go after how we want things to change, right? Unless without reasoning with the other person and really driving to a behavioral change, right? The most uh, recommended and the best form of making that change in the other person in terms of behavior is to confront, right? And what I want to cover here is, I think, the dictionary uh, meaning for confrontation is to face the other with the facts and the feelings and asking them to change their behavior for me, right? If you look at this definition, you'll notice that there is nothing negative in this. You are actually facing the person with the facts and the feelings, right? And asking them to change. So confrontation has an absolutely no negative conversation. It's a start of a conversation. A confrontation is a catalyst to a conversation about what you want to change in the other person. It does not have to lead to conflict. Most confrontation leads to conflict because it is not done right. Okay, and we'll look at what we mean by not done right. Okay, we already covered the definition. Okay, so confronting others is just creating, there is some disappointment and we want them to confront, right? Confrontation itself cannot include a solution. The confrontation conversation has to culminate in a solution. But the key part that we want to look at when you confront others is, why is it that we are going to confront the other? The reason is we are asking them to change, shift, or alter their behavior such that it will produce the desired results. Right? Again, produce the desired results. Right? It is not changing, shifting, or altering the behavior such that I will like it. Right? So most confrontation becomes a conflict because we get into the confrontation with the intent, fundamental intent, that I am going to ask this person to change to a behavior that I want them to change to, right? And I already go with the solution that I have thought of. If the other person does not agree to that, my way of changing the behavior or my solution, then I am not going to agree to this, right? If that is the intent with which we want to go into confrontation, then that's the wrong way of doing confrontation, because that will lead only to conflict, right? If we went in with the intent that, look, I need a solution to a problem, and I believe that that problem is being caused by the other person showing a certain behavior, right? And the ultimate goal is for both of us to be able to solve that particular problem, right? Then the confrontation will lead into the right channel and make the discussion much more meaningful and will not result in conflict. Okay, so what do I mean by that? A person constantly keeps coming to late to work, right? The impact is the work is not being done, or the impact could be that others are also started coming late because of that, and there is a huge impact on the work, right? So then a lot of the focus in the conversation has to be on, look, because of your coming late, this is getting impacted, right? How do we fix that, right? And then get to a solution that is workable for everyone to ensure that the work will get done on time. Okay, I'm going to quickly cover a few slides. So one key tool that we want to introduce today to you all is what we call as iMessages, right? iMessages is a confrontation starter, essentially a conversation starter which helps you communicate to the other person the facts and the feelings of what you're thinking and pass it to the other person to ask them to change, right? The order of the three components of an iMessage are not important, right? But you have to ensure that when you construct a message, you construct it in such a way that you are able to cover all the three components. Okay. So the first component is specific behavior, right? What is the specific behavior that is causing me to be upset, right? So when you're late for work, when you speak harshly, when you speak in a wrong tone, right? When you don't complete your work on Friday, right? Whatever, right? That is, so focus on the very specific behavior. Do not focus on general things, right? Look, your laziness is impacting all the work. Now that's a very, very generic statement, and that is a statement that's not the right way to start a confrontation. You want to be able to start a confrontation with a very, very specific behavior that is causing you to be upset and that you want changed. Right? The second component is the primary feelings, right? Most times we have primary feelings that also asked us to cover, meaning that are covered with secondary feelings, right? So, for example, I am very disappointed that you're coming in late to work. Right now, that is a secondary feeling, right? Because you could be disappointed not because that person is coming late to work, right? There's a very fundamental feeling that you're anxious that that person is coming too late because the work is not getting done, right? Because the work is not getting done, you're anxious, and that anxiety is turning into a disappointment. So try to focus on the primary feeling and say, hey, I'm anxious that the work is not done when you come late to work, right? That is the primary feeling that you should be expressing to that other person. And that is usually what we call as misdirected feeling. Because when you have a feeling, secondary feeling is usually against the behavior, the primary feeling is usually against the outcome, right? And when the focus is on the outcome, it is also important that you focus on the primary feeling and not on the secondary feeling. The third component is focus on the tangible effects, right? What is the effect of that particular behavior that has on either you, the team, the organization, it could be whatever, right? And try to put it in terms of time, energy, money, or fulfillment. Try to put it in one of these tangible effects such that the other person will understand the impact of their behavior. So here are some examples, right? So I get anxious when you're late for work. When this happens, productivity falls off, and the rest of the team has to scramble to catch up, right? Now that is something saying, look, your behavior is causing this to happen, right? That is the focus of the iMessage itself, and that way it will start a conversation in the meaningful way, right? Rather than trying to put the person on the spot and make them become defensive or close out that conversation or take it in the wrong direction. Okay. So how do you actually confront others? Right. First is, like I said, check your motive. If your intent is, look, I want this to happen my way, then don't even worry about confrontation or using an iMessage or anything. Just go say it. Okay, it could lead into anything. It could either happen if your power is more. If your power is equal, it could lead into conflict. If your power is lesser, then it may not happen at all, right? Or if you want a solution to your problem, then you craft an iMessage, send your iMessage, right? Once you send your iMessage, then immediately listen. Maybe the other person has a strong reason to why they did something. Maybe the other person had a different solution to solve that problem because they are not able to immediately change their behavior, right? But as long as it solves the problem, that is good enough for us, right? So because that's, again, look back at your motive. If your motive is to solve the problem, then listening and repeating this conversation again and again will lead to a constructive conversation which will ultimately solve that problem. Again, through all this, ensure that even if you are communicating a confrontation message, words form a small part. You have tone and non-verbal that forms a critical component of your communication elements. So with that, I'll close this session. I'll open the house for any questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. This is Dinagaran.
Yes.
Sir, we have received some questions from the participant. Let me look in. Sir, Ms. Satya had asked this question. Sir,
Sure.
can you please say some points to improve our listening skill?
Okay. I think primarily it is a see, it's very easy to say these 5 things, right? These 5 skills, listening skills, and say you have to improve your attending behavior, silence, door openers, acknowledgements, active listening, and all that. Okay, but what I think one of the key things that you need to work on when you start off working on your listening skills is think about what is it that I want as an outcome to this conversation, right? And ingrain very, very deeply in your heart that I am going to put my time and attention to understanding what the other person is trying to tell me in its fullest form, right? And then improve the listening, right? Because one thing is to say I want to be able to improve my skills, right? And that this is true not just for listening. This is true for all types of skills that you want to be able to improve. Unless you put a purpose and motive to why you want to improve something, you are not going to be able to improve that skill at all, right? And that is true with listening as well, right? What is the motive for you to listen, right? And the motive is to ensure that, look, if I realize that today in most of my communications, I am someone that does not listen well, or I tend to half understand what the other person is saying, or I try to jump to conclusions halfway through the other person's communication, right? Or if you reflect back on things that I said, right, there could be situations where you're already thinking of a response while the person is making a 1 minute argument. You're already thinking of a response because you have not, you've decided that this person is going in a certain direction, because of which you did not catch the message fully, right? So if you reflect back on your few past conversations that have happened, you'll realize what is the specific aspect of listening that I will need to improve. Because I put out those 5 skills doesn't mean that nobody is following those 5 skills. Some of us could be following 4 out of 5, some of us could be following 2 out of 5, or in certain situations we could be following certain types of listening skills, right? So it is important to reflect back on those points and say, okay, what is the component of listening that I have missed out on in the past? Or what is the component of listening that I missed out on in the past in certain situations, right? That's also a critical component, right? If I am frustrated, or if I am feeling very sleepy, or if I am tired at the end of the day, right? So those are situations that I tend not to listen, or I tend to exhibit non-desirable listening behaviors, and then very purposefully start working on that.
That's nicely said. Sir, actually, around 6 people had asked that question. And another
Sure.
question, sir, how can we enhance our communication skill? Asked by Ms. Angida.
Okay, so like I said, I think there are different aspects of communication, right? So I think fundamentally break down your communication into multiple components, right? There is written and oral, right? Both of them kind of go together because that's part of building your language, your grammar, your choice of words, and a lot of things, right? So group that together. Then you have things like listening and confrontation and so on. That are key components. And then there is a big component which is non-verbal, right? So from my experience, written and oral is something that is built a lot through your formative years. But if you spend the time and effort, right, you can increase that. At any point in time, you will be able to improve that, right? So just think of how, as a child, you picked up your mother tongue very easily, right? The easiest way that you picked up was because you just started talking to other people. The other people started talking to you. You started understanding context and meaning and situations, started correlating to that. You started watching movies. So today, my children, for example, started talking English at a very young age because they started watching cartoons and movies, and they started picking up words and things from that, right? And it is no different at whatever age. It could be slower at older ages than it was at childhood, and it is also in childhood we don't know a lot of other things, so we tended attribute to meanings to that. Now there is a little bit of unlearning that we need to do. But the one thing that I will tell people, if you want to focus on written and oral communication, watch movies, particularly English, read books, read newspapers, read very, very heavily, because that will improve your choice of words, construct of sentences, and also constantly keep. So doesn't matter if it's hard to understand, but spend the time, read it. That's when you will learn that. For oral communication, again, watch movies without subtitles, right? Without subtitles, and try to understand that, because that will also then unconsciously add a lot of repertoire of words and also sentence constructs in your daily language.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, another question. Sir, can you give some idea to overcome my stage fear?
Okay, so stage fear, I think there are 2 components to stage fear, right? One is fundamental confidence in, am I able to communicate well? Am I saying something right or not, right? I think so. The moment you are able to communicate well, to a large extent, you will gain the confidence to go in front and talk to an audience, right? That is, so your ability to communicate to a larger audience comes from your ability to, like, ability to communicate. Right? So if you want to do it in a very controlled space, start talking, presenting something to your friends, stand in front of the mirror and communicate, stand in front of, construct your voices, but that's improvement of your communication skills will have a direct impact of your confidence to get in front of an audience and talk.
How much you will take another one question?
Yes.
So Mr. Abhinash has asked this question.
Sure.
So why technology transfer is not successful, and why and we have to depend on imports instead of improved indigenous technologies.
Okay. I don't know if that is directly related to this topic itself.
Yeah, sorry, yes. And Ms. Sindhisa had asked this question. Sir, can you recommend any websites for communication?
So there are plenty of. So what I will say is, I mean, there are a lot of videos on YouTube that you can follow. Right, there are a lot of references and books. So even in the presentation, I talked about a few books. In general, I think you can just YouTube. I think you don't need to necessarily go to any specific website, go through a training or anything. But if you're interested in going through language trainings as such, then there are websites like Rosetta Stone and so on, which you could always refer. But in my opinion, just free content on YouTube videos is more than enough to improve communication skills and language.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much for
thank you very much
for your successful presentation and nice answer for the various different queries. And we believe that certainly this program will enhance the participants' communication skill and listening skills, and this will help them to go higher. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Technology. We will meet in some other occasion. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, participants, thank you so much. Please watch CITChennai.com/webinar to know more about the forthcoming webinars. And so those who belong to civil engineering, tomorrow the online conferences are going to be held. So those who want to participate, so you can still register, and the information is available in the website ChennaiInfoTechnology.com/webinar. And also for the students, those students and faculties, those who are from mechanical, physics, and those who want to enhance their or get the fundamentals from the mechanical engineering, can register for the 1 week faculty development program, which is going to be held between June 1st to June 5th. So totally 10 experts are going to be called. So 10 experts will be sharing their knowledge on fundamentals of mechanical engineering, and there will be 10 sessions totally. So 2 sessions per day, totally 5 days, 5 to 10 sessions. And the 10 experts will only be from 3 main institutions like IITs, NITs, IITDM, and another university. So even those who do not have the knowledge of mechanical engineering, but may be willing to learn the mechanical engineering, can also participate in this course. Those who want to enhance their fundamentals knowledge of mechanical engineering, those who want to learn mechanical engineering, those who have missed out their learning since they might have opted some other branch of engineering, even though they have liked mechanical engineering, so they can also register for this particular course. So 1 week faculty development program. So it will be highly useful. You can go out of registration. The registration link is available in the college website. And if you have any further doubts, so you can approach us also. So through WhatsApp, you can approach me. And all the certificates for the programs, whatever we have conducted so far, have been sent to your inbox. And so the as usual, one request is try to fill the correct data. So name, how it has to be printed in the certificate, and what is the mail ID to which the certificate has to be sent. Has to be properly filled while you are registering for the webinar job. Okay. So while you register for the while you register in the webinar jam application, you need to fill the correct name and mail ID. Okay. So the name which is going to be filled in this particular moment will only be considered for printing your certificate. Hence, we request to fill correctly. And the mail IDs to which it has to be sent to be filled correctly. So, so we face still people are entering they not only the correct mail IDs. Okay, so try it should be entered in the correct format. So if you enter, so the certificates will be sent on the day itself. Else one day it will take extra. Within another one day from the day of the program, your certificates will be reaching the inbox. Okay, so far all the certificates have been sent. So this certificate will be sent within tomorrow afternoon. Okay, so if you have any queries, if you have not received any questions, any certificates, even you have properly registered into the webinar, so you can approach us. We are ready to help you. Thank you so much. We will meet tomorrow in some other webinar. Thank you so much. And also, I wanted to convey another one thing. So tomorrow, between 10 to 11 a.m. So Dr. S. Ramasundaram, Director of Research from one Korean organization. So he is from South Korea, and he is also the chairman of, president of Korean Tamil Sangam. Is going to address tomorrow. So he is going to talk about some solution on COVID-19, solution of COVID-19 through synthesis of some applications, synthesis. And also, he is going to add something on the scope of opportunities for Indians in Korea. So that will be very good session for students, and especially for students and also for faculty. Faculty, if you listen, you can also guide others. So tomorrow you can join to the particular webinar. So almost we have sent mail to all. So you can visit our college website to know more about that. That will be very good. One of the very good program for the student as well as the faculties and even parents and the faculties. If you listen, you will be able to guide others too. Okay. So thank you so much. We will meet tomorrow in that webinar.